Welcome to Blacklace and Bone,
where we talk about everything that's spooky, kooky, and a little bit creepy.
with a mix of cutesy. So today we are going to talk about the most haunted places in the UK. And the UK is very haunted, especially around Essex.
Yes.
Give a little hint because we have to do an episode about this. But Essex was one of the main witch trial capital, so it is haunted.
Lots of vengeful spirits in here.
Yes, and Colchester was also our capital. So, and Colchester was where the Romans came over and everything as well. So
much action.
Yes, but that's another episode to talk about. So we've got our 5 top ones at the moment. Most of them are in Essex. There is one that's more to the east. Are we east?
We're east.
Oh, to the west. Yeah, more closer to Wales. Yes, so we will start off with our Shan. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first location we are using is going to be Pendle Hill.
Ooh.
Now this is going to be, I wonder what about?
There is a certain demographic that might know.
Yes, it's called Pendle Hill, and obviously anyone who does know will also know about the Pendle Witches. So obviously Pendle Hill is in, I'm going to try to pronounce this. Please do not shoot me for pronunciation. I'm going to say Lancashire.
Lancashire? We're
Lancashire.
Yeah, we have completely different accents. Lancashire, something like that. We're assuming.
Good attempt. Okay, so it's in said location, as we have just said, for sake of me not having to try and repeat myself and make myself look even more like an idiot.
Yes.
This is where the famous Pendle Witches trials happened. This was back in 1612.
So what, 4 centuries ago?
5.
5 centuries? No, 4 centuries.
16, 17, 18, 19, 2000s, 210s.
Oh, yeah, sure.
On to 220, so actually now it's 6.
No, centuries is 100 years. Decades is 10 years. Math ain't nothing. Math ain't nothing.
I did pass my grades, I promise. Somehow I didn't.
So you've got no excuse. Anyway, composure.
Moving on.
4 centuries ago.
For argument's sake, yes. 4 centuries ago. This story of the Pendle Witches had been well documented, which is actually quite surprising. Obviously, there are certain parts of culture, especially like royalty and stuff like that, that obviously has to be documented for, you know, ruling purposes and the function of the country. But stuff like this could obviously have easily been lost and whatnot. But
surprisingly, I was watching the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix. I was rewatching it, and funny enough, they do talk about the Pendle Witches and the Pendle Witch Coven in the show. So that's an American show as well that is also talking about the Pendle Witches. Out of nowhere, I just heard it and I was like, oh my god!
Got the reputation, Bill.
Got the reputation!
So yeah, obviously this was well documented. The story of their trails is quite true, apparently. However, this is the thought that the witches still haunt this hill and terrify anybody that makes contact with them.
Which, I mean, I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, you know, was it generational? It was
generational. Yeah, it was the generational. It was the whole.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll get more into it because we do have an episode about it. But it was like literally like mothers, grandmothers, daughters.
The entire like generational family of women were literally sentenced to death.
We obviously will talk about it more in a later episode, like how the witch trials were in the UK. But yeah.
But upsettingly, it's not just adults that they haunt, nor just the people that were accused of witchcraft. There is children ghosts and unfortunate people that have lost their lives on the hill. So it's a mixture.
Yeah, and obviously the sadder part is because it's a hill, most of them are probably self-inflicted as well. And yeah, and obviously the witches are like probably revengeful and everything, and it's really sad to see. And even the children side of it, like,
yeah, it is unfortunate. Obviously, it is a location that has its history of blood.
yeah, and especially with like a lot of places like Colchester as well.
Yeah,
It's hard for us witches to be there.
yeah, but interestingly, aircrafts have also landed there as well.
Oh, I don't think much of a landing. Don't think it was much of a fort to land at all.
No, but you don't know what the influence behind that is. So
yes, unfortunately so.
But yes, obviously Pendle Hill has its fill of blood and its very dark past, and obviously it, for a hill, it has claimed a lot of souls. Now we are going to move on, and this one I'm going to leave over to you.
So we have the Felbrig Hall. Once again, do apologise for the mispronunciations, but we're gonna go with it. So Felbrig Hall is in Norfolk, which is Sussex, I believe, or Suffolk.
Don't ask me, I did not take geography.
It's either Sussex or Suffolk. I'm sorry. Where the paranormal sightings are mainly focused on the former resident, William Widham III, who was well known for his passion of books. And when a fire had broke out in his friend's library, not even his own, his friend's, in 1809, so that was 2 centuries ago, my darling, he had to go back and rescue. He went back in, rescued some of the like well-known or precious volumes, like probably like the history documentations and stuff like that.
He went into a fire to rescue books.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
I mean, I'm a book lover. I love reading books, but even me, I'd be like, cons outweigh the pros here.
To be fair, nowadays we can go on Amazon like audiobooks and everything else. But back then, a lot of books were obviously precious because there was only like one written kind of thing.
It wasn't like mass production.
Yeah, now we can get a replacement of books, and we can also have it on a tablet.
That is true.
So he was able to save some of them, luckily, but he did have a fall and was badly injured, which then later on, while he was in hospital, later succumbed to, and he had died. And this is actually quite a nice one because he ends up his ghosts end up being seen in the library, still finishing books that he wasn't able to finish in his life, and he usually just sits there. Doesn't bother anyone, just sits there in his library, just chilling.
Someone who actually got a content afterlife.
Yeah, the staff that work there now has been like, they just see him relaxing either in the chair or reading a book. So actually quite a good afterlife.
Although it does make me question, like, you know, obviously he would have been reading very like different stuff back then.
Yeah.
And like it's weird to kind of picture like he might be sitting there, I don't know, like reading like something completely modernized, and he's just like, what is this?
Imagine him starting to read Twilight.
He'd be like,
50 Shades of Grey. Obviously back then that type of intimacy weren't okay talk or reading. So for him as a ghost, we don't know how old this library books are or anything, or if they've updated the library books. He's just sitting there reading Twilight or 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, either way, it's still the fact that he's probably going to be one of the most up-to-date ghosts. Like one of the oldest ghosts that also has all the knowledge of the 21st century.
Oh, we should have introduced him to Wattpad.
No.
Archive.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on.
We are going to go to Manningtree. I'm pretty sure I cannot mess up that pronunciation.
Yeah, that one's top of Essex. No, yes, it's top of Essex.
We didn't study geography.
Can you tell we did history? Can you tell?
Well, okay, in Manningtree, which is North Essex,
Hey!
or more common, the White Hart pub, is haunted by England's self-appointed witchfinder general Matthew Hopkins. Yes, Matthew Hopkins, the witchfinder general who led all the witch hunts around the UK. Yeah, that dude, if anyone has been paying attention in history class, he is the reason why many of your ancestors or relatives may have been burnt at the stake.
Yes.
That guy. So, the guy with a lot of blood on his hands, I wonder. In the 1640s, the pub was used as the planning ground for Matthew Hopkins, where he orchestrated numerous... I am so sorry.
Persecutions.
My dyslexia does not want to function. Well, it does want to function. It's affecting me currently. Yes. So it's where he orchestrated like numerous of his persecutions of innocent people, because obviously, you know, anyone could be accused of witchcraft, and it ended up just turning into people accusing people they didn't like and watching them die, basically.
Well, like American has like a reason. I say reason. Usually it's like about land and everything. If they kill one person, they can get the land. With the UK, it was mostly for Matthew Hopkins to earn the money.
Yeah, and obviously it made him like a self-proclaimed hero and whatnot, but he wasn't so much a hero to the people he was accusing. And it could be over the silliest things, like a birthmark, a burn, like any like marks on your body.
Even if you had a different nose.
Literally, and it was like, witch. Like, it was like so much so, like, that was like back in the day, like conforming.
Yeah, you pretty much like what it's 1600s. So at the time there was two different religions anyway, which was obviously Catholicism and Protestant, which is obviously still Christian, but obviously you either have Catholic or you're Protestant. Protestant. There we go. So when like anyone would kind of divide between them two, then you got a bigger problem. Which then everyone would blame you for being a witch, because obviously it was blasphemy and everything else and blah blah blah. Yeah, the usual fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, out of the 300 people obviously accused or practicing witchcraft, 100 of them were sentenced to hang. The other 200, it would have been confessions and burns, or, you know, like trial by water and things like that.
Yeah.
But
we'll get more into it in our next episode.
Yeah.
Or one of the future episodes.
But 100 of them were sentenced to hang. But you can also visit the pod in the village of Mistley.
Pond. Like the river. Not river, but like a little duck pond.
We are using a bit of a smaller screen to read our research off of, and there may be a couple of typos. So
yeah.
We do apologise.
I may have gained sudden nails out of nowhere while I was typing on the keyboard.
Yeah. So you can also visit the pond in the village of Mistley, where those found guilty of witchcraft were infamously drowned. Now, I don't mean, oh, like, you're sentenced to die drowned. This was a case of you were given a trial, in which case, if you floated,
you're a witch.
If you drowned,
you're human. So either way, well,
you're dead.
And if you were proven to be a witch because you floated, which is what normal bodies do, if you were floated, you still would be end up drowned. So either way, you're dead. So no matter what.
No, but obviously the interesting fact about this, it's a little tip, which obviously will be mentioned again in a future episode. There was something that they did to cause people to float, because obviously you'd have your feet and your hands tied together, which made the likelihood of floating a bit more unlikely, because obviously it's easier to float if you're spread out like a bit like a starfish, even level.
Yeah, or if you think about it in like The Incredibles, when Miss Elastic Girl literally becomes like a parachute, it's almost like that with that air pocket. That's what they would do for floating as well. Because
yeah, that was one of the ways. But another interesting way is obviously your body would be bound with rope, and what they would sneakily do was they would obviously, you'd be wearing a white robe for your trial, and they would tie the rope in a certain way that it would start to create air pockets in the robe you were wearing, therefore being able to cause you
to float.
So there were sneaky ways of making it look like witches were around and being obviously accused, because obviously this led him to be able to get his money.
And he was probably one of the richest men back then as well, which is
he was being paid a bucket load of money back then. Obviously, I think it was like 16, like between 16 to 28 pounds, which obviously in current currency isn't a lot, but back then that was a lot of money, considering you think about the working class getting 1 or 2 tuppence back then.
It weren't even like,
or like a fifth penny.
Yeah, fifth penny
or half a penny.
Half penny. It would most likely be half a penny per hour.
Yeah, half a penny.
So the lowest class.
If you look at someone earning half a penny and him getting somewhere between 16 to around about 28 pounds, that's like someone getting paid minimum wage today compared to someone who's earning like 6 figures, basically.
It's literally like that.
He was the rich beyond the rich, and the way it was all blood money.
Literally, it was all blood money. And I hope he is rotting in a good place in hell.
No, he's in a pub. He's in a pub.
It's the most British thing as well, to be haunting a pub.
I mean, do you think, like, obviously, if he remembered his victims, he's sitting in the pub going,
"You would have been next."
No, like, if he remembers and, like, he can sense the bloodlines, it'd be like, your great-great aunt was a witch. And he's, like, just reminiscing, like, I killed your family member, I killed your family member, oh, I also killed your family member too. Just sitting there thinking, ha ha ha.
Yeah, literally.
Like, I do not get it.
He would also be, like, looking at new people and be like, I would burn you, I would hang you, I would drown you.
That would be everyone nowadays. I mean, with piercings, tattoos, the fact that we all have our own identity. I mean, the fact that now, obviously, we have people of different races, which back then wasn't really much of a thing. He'd be looking at everyone thinking, yeah, witch. And his head must have been exploding. Like, literally, with all of this.
And also the fact that a woman is in a pub as well. I think he would immediately be like, witch. Because obviously back then, women were either working in the upstairs room in a pub or a tavern, or working as a waitress with their assets on display, readily to be, how do I put this nicely, grabbed non-consensually by paying customers. But then obviously now we can go in and ask for a pint of beer or lager with tattoos of our own identity.
Actually, maybe being in the pub is probably the best place for him to be. Because if you're thinking about it, with how the 21st century has evolved, as I said to you, he's probably thinking, you're a witch, you're a witch, you're a witch. He probably thinks that England has been overrun by the devil and he is probably losing his mind.
So he is in a special place called hell.
It's his own very special form of punishment.
So, see, it's British. For British people, a pub is heaven. For him, is hell. And I love that.
Because if you think he can't leave the pub and see the outside world, he's probably thinking, oh no, England has been damned. It has been sent to hell.
And even
These are all demons.
And even if he was end up in like Colchester Castle, for example, like if he was to like converse into the two areas, Colchester obviously isn't. Colchester Castle is near Colchester University, which is also where women is learning education for number one and reading books, which was a bad thing as a witch. And second of all, is also when women are finding out their identity. So, one, there's going to be lesbians. Two, also bisexuals. And three, alternative women that have tattoos, that are drinking at night, are without husbands or their fathers to control them. They're also 16-year-olds who aren't married to men. It's a special place for hell for him, and I love it. Anyway, before we get more into like our rant about Matthew Hopkins, let's go on to the next one. Also based in Essex, Cash's Well. So Cash's Well is in South Essex, and has been abandoned since 1924. So a very early on one, more than the other ones that are like 400 centuries, 4 centuries. And it's said to be one of the most haunted places in Essex. I don't believe that. I believe, obviously, Colchester is more haunted because of the witch trials. Plus, it also dates back to Romans, and also London because of the Black Death, Black Plague, and everything else. So I don't believe that part of the research. But we're going to say it just in case. We're going to say it just in case. But I personally don't believe that because you have London, Colchester, and everywhere else.
Yeah.
The whole city is haunted.
We're just going to cross the T's and dot the I's.
Yes. So it's one of the most haunted places in Essex. So at least it's a little bit in Essex, but Colchester's in Essex. Right. I'm going to go on a rant if I carry on. And it is said that you can hear the screams of lost spirits. So we got more of a tricky one. The well was built by Edward Cash in the early 1900s. Cash. It's a very posh British name. Cash. It's Edward as well, so it's Edward Cash. It was one of the 5 that was built to supply the local area with bottled water. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun.
Luxury at the time.
Yeah. Well, it's now a luxury now. For a bottle of water. To get a Voss water is about £4.
Well, we evolved so much, clearly.
We evolved so much. Anyway, but it was closed as the water was contaminated, which was standard back in the day. There is literally a tap in London that is literally the most haunted tap in the world because it was surrounded by so much death because it was contaminated.
Yeah, because obviously medical science was not a thing.
No. You get E. coli and that's done, or cholera. You're dead. Back then.
Yeah, basically.
But a sanatorium, so this is like a different area of it, but it's like, I've been to the place, but it's like a hill. So at the bottom is the well, and at top is where the old sanatorium was. It was like a hospital for people recovering from long illnesses. Thank you. I can't speak. She can't read, I can't speak. So basically, like, this would be like TB, so tuberculosis, or like the general ones, cholera, or like the big ones that you're dead instantly kind of thing, because obviously back then medicine didn't exist pretty much. You pretty much either get an arm cut off or something else. But yeah, and it was leeches. Yes. And then the people recovering from long illnesses was built on the same grounds as where the 5 wells were. And it was said that the drainage from the building flooded the well. Which, I mean, you got to think about this. There's ill people filled the sanatorium with certain things, either going to the toilets or throwing up, and then the nurses are dumping out the deadpans, the pans, and everything, plus also the morgue, if there was a morgue in it as well, and that's
Probably.
all being dumped near where the whale is, and people are drinking that, paying to pretty much die.
I mean, if you think about it, obviously, especially if it was near a sanitarium, if obviously a lot of fluid from people who died there is then being exchanged over towards like near this well, obviously most spirits tend to lie either attached to a place or an object, or more like attached to where part of their remains and that are. So obviously if their DNA is in the ground and in the water, like it shifts their place of rest.
Yeah, and obviously where I've been there before, there is still water in the well as well.
So you can't imagine who or what is in it.
Yes. But the upsetting part is it's also rumored to be haunted by children. And obviously them children are obviously from the sanatorium, and they obviously probably when they were alive wanted to go out and just play around. And obviously they unfortunately succumbed to their circumstances and are now playing forever. And they usually plan to meet up at the well and play around, which is nice because they are able to have a bit of a childhood that they didn't have. But at the same time, it's still upsetting to hear about children dying at such a young age. It is.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was a lot more of a common thing back then, but also children were also patients of a sanitarium, because obviously back then it was you had to conform. Otherwise, if you acted out, like there must be some medical explanation as to why that is. Obviously, this is before realizing obviously children are naturally creative. Children have naturally open minds because they have not yet been conformed. So obviously you would have children sent to the sanitarium for simple things like obviously having an imaginary friend. They took that as obviously hallucinating. Or if a child had an irrational fear, whether it be of dogs or the dark, they would think obviously something is wrong with their mind. So children, unfortunately, for simple childhood like traits, were sentenced to a sanitarium because of said things, and 9 times out of 10 they were left there.
And also, obviously, their parents might have been there as well, so they're watching their parents die while being conformed into the standard for a child, and also, obviously, being gay as well. Like, if a child displays that kind of thing before anyone else, and obviously a child doesn't know to hide it back then. Obviously adults would be able to hide it well, but well, not a lot, but yeah, kids weren't able to do that. And obviously if they knew from such a young age, they'd be sent to places like that as well, which is upsetting. It is really upsetting.
I mean, sometimes there didn't have to be anything wrong with the child. You know, parents had full right, because obviously it was parents own their children, basically. Parents had the full right to actually just abandon their children at these places. Hence why, obviously, you would probably get more child spirits around there. Because obviously back then, you know, you could do anything. You could sell your child, you could drop your child off, you know, it wasn't incriminating back then.
Yeah, obviously this was the difference from the kids being able to work in factories only like 100 years beforehand. Not even that, probably 50 years before that. Kids were allowed to work in, were obviously working in factories or chimney sweeps or anything like that from like the age of like 5 to chimney sweep would be quite young still, because they need to be small little children, which is upsetting. I was like, imagine you like your 5-year-old sibling have to do that,
and obviously 9 times out of 10 getting stuck.
Yes, especially with the factories and everything. So obviously it went from kids are working in factories to that's illegal now, because obviously good thing. But then it ended up obviously then getting worse, and then parents would have so many kids because obviously in that time you'd have more kids than just having the one, because usually they didn't survive. And then once you had more than you want, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yes, anyway, obviously that is a lot of the story behind the will.
Yes, so we're moving on to our next and final one.
Yes. We are going to move on to the Ancient Ram Inn. The fact that it says ancient
Yeah.
is going to have history, obviously.
This one's a bit of a trigger warning as well. I'm saying this now. So if you do not like the thought of sexual things happening that are non-consensual, please stop watching now and then check out the rest of our things later on.
Yes. So, obviously, the Ancient Ram Inn in Gloucestershire, or Gloucestershire,
Yeah.
I'll say both ways because there are people who go around saying both.
Yes.
Was built way back in the 12th century. Now, I can't muck that up, it literally says it right here in front of me.
Yes.
So, yeah. It was built back in the 12th century and is one of the most famous haunted sites in the UK. Now, this is because there are many ghosts that haunt the rooms, and its creepy basement is a little girl rumored to have been killed by her mother, a rogue priestess as well, who can be heard wailing in the night. And perhaps the worst of all are the succubus and incubus, which are sex demons, for anyone who knows their creatures.
Wattpad.
Oh my god. Anyway, yeah. So they're basically sex demons, which get their energy from sexual advances to humans and were known to push them into the beds.
Yeah. So there is an owner now, and they still own it. He wanted to do it up and everything, but he even has said himself he has had the succubus and incubus try stuff with him, and he's either woken up in bed with feeling with someone on top of him or anything like that. And yeah, it's just
Yeah, but I mean that is such a very array lineup of spirits.
See, the only problem is how an incubus and a succubus. Like, I understand if it was like an inn, because obviously brothels, but how an incubus and a succubus usually in demonology has to be summoned. So someone from the 12th century to now has summoned these two sex demons for either their enjoyment or to ruin everyone else's day.
Do you think like it's a family legacy, or you just got like what, a 800-year-old person just walking about? You know, I don't know, like an old regular.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know, Earl or like Cole.
yeah,
or...
but could have back in the 12th century be like, there's not many women that want to do brothels. How about we go through demons and we don't have to pay them?
I think it might be more of a case like someone opened a book that they probably shouldn't have and didn't exactly understand what they were reading, because that's usually what it is 9 times out of 10. It's not usually some evil mastermind who's like, I am going to wreak havoc on this inn. I think books or transcripts have gotten into the wrong hands, and someone just thought they were going to have a nose and has accidentally done something they shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's just general.
This is why you do not read aloud.
Do not read Latin out loud. Unless you can read Latin and translate it into whatever language you 100% know. Do not read it. Do not read it.
Basic knowledge now, but back then it's like, oh, what is this? And they're just going to try. Especially if it's like some drunk or something who's like, you know what, I'm going to impress the ladies by like saying I'm a traveller and I can read this language. Look at this piece of paper. I'm going to read it. And it's like,
No. We have learned, well, the 21st century have learned from Supernatural. We have learned from Teen Wolf. We have learned from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The Lost Boys. We have learned from pop culture. Do not summon or read Latin.
Oh my god. If you do not, it's basic principle nowadays. If you do not understand the text and it looks old, do not read it.
And more importantly, if you have no clue what you're doing, do not play with Ouija boards. Do not do Charlie Charlie. And do not do what the internet tells you to do if it's a trend. If it's something to do with a demon, do not do it. If you don't know how to banish it, do not do it.
Why'd you sound like you remind me of a TikToker right now with this voice that you're putting on?
Do not do I don't know.
I don't know, but you remind me of someone. I'm going to have to look into that later. But yeah, it's obviously two demons, which I think they might actually be a pair if you look at it.
Yeah, because probably the incubus goes obviously after the women or gay men, and the succubus either goes for the males, or lesbians. But obviously incubuses and succubuses turn into the thing that you desire most. So they look like, to you, they look like a person, or you're a fantasy.
So basically, if I go to this inn and I suddenly see Tom Hiddleston, turn around and walk the other way. Okay.
James McAvoy, thank you very much. Both British men as well.
So yeah, obviously, if you decide that you're going to visit this inn and you suddenly see someone who you think they are the walking fantasy of my dreams.
Not your dreams, everyone else's dreams. So their dreams.
Of their dreams.
I don't think not many people like Tom Hiddleston in that way. I think mostly it'll be Ryan Reynolds from a lot of people.
Yeah, he has suddenly become popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, if you decide to go to this inn and you suddenly see someone who is the absolute picture of your dreams,
don't trust it.
As much as you may think, oh my god, all my dreams and prayers have been answered, there's a price tag with that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, because it also starts off as innocent as it can be. Like, oh, a little grace here, a little thing like that. And then all of a sudden you're dead on your bed. Because they literally...
Yeah, so obviously...
out of you, and that's it.
Yeah, so obviously you've got the pair of demons.
Yes.
You've then got the little girl in the basement.
Which, if you've seen Sam and Colby's video at the Ancient Room, you can hear her say hello to him. I'm just saying.
Anyway. So you got the little girl, and then you got a priestess.
Yes. Which is, I think she's more commonly in the bishop's room, if I remember correctly from research. Bishop's room is like very haunted. But,
so I'm just like, this is a bit of a mashup.
Yes, we're having a bit of a mashup here. I think there's also a little boy, but he weren't in much research, so I couldn't really put him down.
I'm more concerned of how the little girl got there in the first place.
Well, if it was her mum that killed her.
Oh, yeah.
It could have been the wife of the owner of the tavern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or for all we know, she could be protecting her, because back then it weren't really a prosecution to hurt children.
Not only that, a lot of people did kill their children to end any future suffering. So yeah, obviously, if it was like you knew you couldn't feed your child, you knew they were ill, or they were going to starve, or something like that, or suffer in any way, some parents made the call to obviously put their child out of any further misery.
And obviously, the coroner's office would obviously be like natural causes.
Basically,
because technically it was.
They're so small and fragile, and at the time it was really hard to try and pinpoint what would go wrong with the child.
Yes.
But obviously, this is only some of the few of the places around the UK, more specifically closer to us. Some areas not so much, but obviously these were just some of the few.
And hopefully in the future we'll be able to visit these places and actually do some ghost hunts. Not the Ancient Rim. Not the Ramin.
No.
I'd rather not.
No, because out of the two of us, I think I would be the one to be more persuaded.
Yars. It depends on who's in front of me. But anyway, so You can check us out on YouTube, obviously, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and TikTok, and Instagram as well.
So if you do happen to like our spooky content, please do consider maybe becoming a part of this spooky little family.
Or cult.
We're not that far yet. But yes, do please think about joining our little spooky family for more episodes about anything that is a little bit spooky, maybe even a little bit cutesy.
Just a bit.
Anything of the deranged category, basically.
Yes. And also, give us some ideas about episodes that you want to see.
Yeah, obviously, if it's dark or if it's very British, we will be more than happy to cover any of the ideas or topics. If you also have experiences of haunted places yourself, obviously, do let us know in the comments.
Oh, 100%. Like, I grew up in a haunted place.
Yeah, we want to hear all of this. So yeah, that is all we have for today's episode.
So, we will see you next time. See you later, guys.
Ciao!